Hi, welcome everybody. We are here another week on our live stream series, and today we're going to have Sayan with us from FREENOW, and he's going to be talking about how to succeed as a marketplace product manager. For start, we're going to start presentation very soon, but first of all, remember that here on the screen you can see the QR code and the Slido code through which you can vote in our icebreaker question, and also you can write questions for Sayan to reply at the end of the presentation. That we're going to have 10-15 minutes Q&A. And as usual, we're going to be streaming both in LinkedIn, on YouTube, and also on Facebook and Twitch. So welcome everybody, and thank you for joining us another Tuesday evening here. Uh, and let's start that. As I mentioned previously, we are having Sayan Maiti, Director of Product Marketplace on Supply at FREENOW today, and he's going to be talking about succeeding as a marketplace product manager. So stay with us to know all the insights he's about to share. About me, I'm going to be your host today. I'm Andrea, and I'm the growth marketing manager at Proud People. I've been with Proud People for about 3 years now, and previously to that, I was working in business development, and I also have experience in BTC marketing. And yes, about us, about product people, in case it's the first time that you're joining, or we have people who hasn't joined in a long time. What do? We do interim product manager and product operations and transformation acceleration. We have around 40 in-house product managers who their job is to do all the hands-on work of product managers on an interim basis. We do these events weekly to share knowledge and to share product management insights with our community. Our community is around 60,000 product managers around the world. And we have these online events every week. We also have offline events that you will be able to check out on later. So, for starters, we want to get to know you. Let's do a little icebreaker question. And the question that we're going to have today is, which trade off do you think is the hardest in a marketplace? Remember, you can reply to this question by scanning the QR code here or adding the code on slido.com. The options we have are keeping prices fair based on growing revenue, ensuring supply versus demand, optimizing for user experience versus scaling fast, and short-term growth versus long-term sustainability. So, Sayan, let's see what our audience has to say today. We're going to give them a few more seconds to vote, and we'll see what are the results very, very soon. Okay, so we have a clear winner by 83% is ensuring supply versus demand. So that's the most voted option from our community, Sayan. Let's see how you integrate this on your presentation later. And as I mentioned, Sayan is going to be taking over now. We're welcoming him, and the stage is for you, Sayan. Thank you very much for being here today with us.
Great. Thanks a lot, Andrea, and really excited to meet everyone and speak before everyone. I'm quite relieved, to be frank, because as I see the survey results, I feel that, okay, I have also something that really connects to what you all voted for. But I think you will find out soon, like why it all makes sense, right? So let me start with my presentation. And yeah, I think, first of all, welcome everyone who is watching this session or watches this session later. I think today's topic is very close to me, and I will soon understand why. But I think marketplace is one of the most interesting topics out there, and I would like to show some of my experiences on what I've learned and what I think I can give as tactics for you to succeed there. Okay, but before we go there, let me first talk a bit about me. So I'm originally from India. I'm born and brought up there, but over the last 3 years, I've been in Germany. Last year or so in Berlin, and by profession, just like many PMs, I've been a computer engineer, and then I did coding for 3 years as a software developer with Oracle before I did my MBA. Worked for a year in IT consulting before I moved to this interesting field of product management, where I've spent the last 11 years first as a PM and later as a PM leader. So I've quite some time spent on marketplaces, different kinds of marketplaces. So my career in PM started in an e-commerce marketplace, which was funded by SoftBank. It was a two-sided marketplace. Then I moved to a three-sided marketplace, which is a food delivery marketplace. Very interesting problems. And later down the journey, I'm currently working in a ride-hailing marketplace, which is again two-sided. Also worked for some time in fintech and mobility car rental domains, and across India, US, and European markets from a user and business perspective. But that's not just about me, right? So I also like to talk about interesting things. And what has excited me in my career so far has been my focus on impact. Whenever I can get a user impact or a business impact, that really gives me chills even today, and that keeps me going. I also love building and nurturing products and teams, right? So products to start with, but later down the line as a product leader, teams is what you work with. So that also gives me a lot of excitement. I love to learn from people, books, podcasts in that order. People, of course, are the more interesting bunch in this. And I love to play sports whenever I find time. But that's a bit about me, both professionally and personally. But of course, we are not here to learn more about me, right? So we are here to learn about marketplace and what it takes to succeed. So these are the 4 points I want to cover, and I start from marketplace because our understanding of marketplace may be very similar, but as you see that there are different kinds of marketplace that exist, right? And later I will talk about what does a marketplace product look like, or what do we call as marketplace product. How does product management look in a marketplace product setting, and what are the different factors that you can consider to succeed. I have some tactics from my own career journey that hopefully should work for you. Okay, so first, what is a marketplace, right? So this is quite basics, but bear with me. I think if you see the world's largest companies, right, so they are actually connecting users, whether it's Amazon that connects buyers with sellers, whether it's Apple or Google App Store ecosystem, right? Everyone has a phone, everyone has an iPhone or a like a Android phone, and there one of the key things that we do is download apps, and those apps are connecting developers with users, right? Google Ads, which is behind Google Search or connected with Google Search, connects users' interest with businesses. Meta connects people with other people as well as advertisers, right? Meta is again one of the top 5 companies in the world. Lyft, my current employer, so although I'm part of FREENOW, we have been recently acquired by Lyft, and our competitor Uber. We connect users with drivers because we are a ride-hailing app. And then there are the food delivery app, whether it's Uber Eats or DoorDash. Volt is one of the subsidiaries of DoorDash, and they connect users to drivers to restaurants, right? So this is a three-sided marketplace. So marketplace is quite interesting because it connects different sides of the users, and the reasons why they are quite popular is as the marketplace places grow, they become better. They become better for the users, they become better for the business, right? So growth brings a lot of network effects, which makes them popular. So just again, marketplace one-on-one. So if you look at how two-sided marketplace works, so on one side there is supply, which could be merchants, sellers, service providers, could be drivers, right? So this is not exhaustive. On the other side, we have demand, which is buyers, customers, and clients which need the service. And in the middle, you can call it as a platform or the marketplace itself that typically guarantees three things. One is speed, like how quickly is it able to match supply and demand, how it can ensure quality, because quality builds trust and it's one of the core pillars of the marketplace, and how it ensures reliability, right? Because outside the marketplace setup, reliability cannot be guaranteed because everyone would try to exploit each other. Like one side of the marketplace would try to exploit each other. That's why all marketplaces need to ensure reliability and improve it over a period of time. But two-sided marketplace, while they're common, my like area of interest is actually three-sided marketplace, because it brings in some nuances which are very, very different and at the same time very interesting. So the three-sided marketplace, the common example is food delivery. So here I've taken Uber Eats, but the same could go for any three-sided marketplace. Typically, there are three sides, which is the person who wants a food eater. There is the person who delivers the food, which is the delivery partner. And the third partner is the restaurant partner, right? Which prepares the food and makes it ready for the delivery partner to pick up. And here it's quite interesting because each of these sides are not connected to the two sides directly, or basically they are connected directly, but they are also very like there are very interesting connections that they make because of these connections. And I'll speak about some of the details, but yeah, it's a very interesting variation of marketplace, right? And I think this is just a graph, so I'll quickly cover it. So the marketplaces have evolved since 1990, so it's been almost 30 plus years since marketplaces started, and it started with first exploiting something called Craigslist, which is a version of digital yellow pages, and then it got unbundled, right? So Craigslist was like you can like publish any kind of request for any kind of service, and then slowly it tried to become more vertical kind of list, like whether it's TaskRabbit for small tasks, Fiverr for part-time jobs, right? But this is how it got unbundled. And the most popular era for marketplaces started in 2009 when Uber and Lyft started, and it just gave way to a lot of different interesting problems that became like called as Uber for X, right? So DoorDash is became like an Uber for food, Lug is for luggage. So there are different kinds of use cases that started with that. And very recently, the most recent innovation that has happened, which is actually quite long, has been a more controlled marketplace setup, which is Honor, for example, is something for caregivers, right? So, like, it's a kind of caregiver marketplace where caregivers are screened and then they are available for old people to take care of, right? And then there are these different marketplaces. And of course, if you see the last major innovation came with Uber, and this was a period where most of the, let's say, famous marketplace companies that stand today are known. Okay, so this is all about marketplace, but what is a marketplace product, right? Like, can you say that every product in a marketplace company is a marketplace product? I think it's not true. So marketplace product is one of the areas within the product and technology setup within marketplace companies, right? So typically the other areas that are existing in a marketplace company could be one focusing on the end user. You can call them rider, buyer, right? It could be different things depending on different businesses. The second is focused on the supply, like it could be driver supply, could be something around partners, fintech. So each of these are focused on their own area. But the reason why marketplace is an interesting problem, as a marketplace PM, your job is to consider the needs of all users and sites, right? So just going back, if you look at some of the other teams that we are speaking about, whether it's rider, driver, or the supply side, right? So they are focusing on one user and optimizing for their experience. But a difficult challenge for a marketplace product or a marketplace product manager is that they need to consider the needs of all users and sites. And that's the most interesting part of the problem. And typically, in a marketplace product, there are different kinds of things that they have within their arsenal to solve these problems, right? And again, this is not an exhaustive list, but this is what I found working in different marketplace companies, that the teams that exist, right, to support marketplace PMs in achieving their goals. So the first is, of course, pricing. All of you know the pricing that the user sees. The pricing is also something that gets paid to the supply side, right? So pricing is the connection between what gets charged versus what gets paid. and typically marketplace charge a fee on or a cut on this entire price, right? So it could be called as a take rate in some cases, could be commission, right? But that's how marketplaces make money. The second is matching. So matching is a logic that, of course, connects these two sides again, like whether it's on the rider or driver, buyer and supply, right? So again, the logic which connects these two sides on how these matches happen is what is called as matching. There are a lot of platform components which are connected with maps, like it could be time, distance, locations, different kinds of predictions that you make from making the algorithms work, whether it's recommendation, personalization, and matching and everything. So maps and platform are the things that connect these algorithms that power the marketplace. uh, and then the other three areas are also quite interesting. Typically you want to shape your behavior of your demand, right, or the demand side. It could be done by promotions and discounts that you have well versed with and you have seen as users. But on the supply side as well, there are different incentives that can be given to the suppliers to change their behavior, or the drivers as well, right? And the last topic is again a very interesting topic for me, because it's something called as rebalancing. What happens is typically the supply and demand incentives don't align, right? So they try to operate differently based on their own personal goals. And rebalancing is a very important thing that needs to happen within every marketplace product. All of these I can explain in the Q&A session if it's not clear, but what I've seen is marketplace product typically has these problems or teams that are solving these problems in depth. Okay, now going to what does product management in a marketplace product looks like, right? And for this, I would like to tell of a story. The story is interesting because this, I think, a lot of you might relate with, depending on if you are going on a summer holiday in Europe, right? So this is, I went to couple of years to Ibiza, right? And after you come out of the airport, you can see these long queues of passengers standing to take their taxis. And on the other side, that time I also saw a lot of taxis standing outside, right? And which made me wonder, like, okay, there are so many taxis, there are so many people. Why isn't the queue moving? Whether it's on the people who are standing in the queue or the taxis itself. And I just walked down and spoke to one of the taxi drivers, and he said that, you know what, like the app that we are using, I think it was Uber, it was not allocating any rides to them, right? So they're just waiting for the ride to happen. And unfortunately, I think the system of people walking to take a taxi was somehow a bottleneck. So the queue was moving slowly. But whatever, like the experience for the passengers was really poor because they were not moving fast enough. The experience for taxi drivers was really poor because they were not getting a ride so that they could pick up a ride and move on, right? So it was really bad on both sides. And this made me wonder, like, okay, so marketplace is such a tricky problem, right? But if a lot of times a marketplace fails not just because of demand and supply not existing, it just happens because the connection between two are quite broken, right? And that's the job of the marketplace product. It's not just about riders and drivers or growing them, but how do you really match them, and how do you align their incentives? How do you make sure that they are fast and they are like fairly kind of matched? How do you ensure the trust in these matches, right? So matching and all the related things around pricing and like predictions and shaping of supply, shaping of demand, all these things really matter in terms of ensuring that the connection really happens, and it really happens reliably and fast. And this is a really an interesting problem for anyone who has worked on it. I would surely like they would understand. And for someone who has not worked on it, I would recommend to work on a marketplace product, right? And just again rephrasing and repeating, so as a marketplace PM, it's not just about just growing one side or the other. It's to really build solutions that work holistically for all sides. So in our the survey that we ran, like we speaking about supply and demand, right? So it needs to happen that any solution that you build needs to be thought of from working for both supply and demand. If you kind of optimize for one side and just ignore the other side, maybe it works for some time, but your solution is deemed to fail, right? So it's not going to sustain for sure. And I think an efficient marketplace product will really grow the market, and it's one of the biggest levers for growth. And it can do it by eliminating the friction. So in our taxi example that you saw, that we had friction because the rides were not going to taxis, people were standing and queuing. And so that's not how you grow the market. You grow the market by eliminating friction for demand and supply. And there are some very prime examples, but I think this is not exhaustive, right? So we all know so many marketplace companies succeeding. So I think before Uber and Lyft came in US, the market was like 2 billion rides, predominantly offline taxis, but it has grown in the last 10 plus years to almost 2.5x, right? And if you look at the same duration, the people in US have not grown, right? So like people have hardly grown in these 12 years to about 7% in US. So the rides have actually happened by eliminating the friction between demand and supply, and by enabling new riders to hail taxis, by bringing new supply to the market. That's how the market has grown. Another prime example is Airbnb, right? So a lot of people didn't even knew that they can stay in others' homes before Airbnb existed. Of course, you could live at your friends and families, but never in a stranger's house, right? So Airbnb did almost 500 million nights and experiences in 2024, and majority of them would have not happened had Airbnb didn't existed, right? So it just created a new market by eliminating this friction between the demand and the supply. And again, a very prime example of a marketplace. Now that I've spoken about, okay, all of these factors, these are things that I think are more coming from my experience, which I would like to speak about. I think marketplace product in general is also very challenging, right? So before I go to speak about what we can do and what I have seen work based on my experiences, I've seen that marketplace product team is one of the most challenging area, right? So the best people in any product companies has been in the marketplace teams because of multiple reasons, right? So one is that you're solving for multiple users at the same time. So you are having to work with local operations, you have to work with finance, legal, marketing, supply operations. All the product teams have some dependencies on you, right? So, and you also have dependencies on them. So there are so many stakeholders that you have to deal with. Marketplace product typically is also an algorithmic product, like it has backend logic, it has backend data science algorithms powered by machine learning. And in most cases you don't have, let's say, UX teams or front end teams that support you, right? So you have to work with the rider team, the driver, the supply side teams. You have to work with, um, let's say, other teams in the organization to make sure that your things happen or that you support others. At the same time, you don't have any control over competition. So competition is one of the most critical inputs, as I will tell you later. And uh, many a times, like, competition affects what you are doing on your side as well. And in general, because of the number of stakeholders, the number of users that you're solving for, there is always this need between doing something tactical, like do it next week, do it the week after, versus do something over a 3 to 6 month period, which moves the needle, right? So what happens is, and this is something that keeps on happening even in my current role, that there is a problem in a market and the market might need your help in solutionizing something because something is not working because of a competitor pressure, because of something has changed in the market, right? And they need your support. Every stakeholder wants to speak to you, every product team has a dependency on you. At the same time, on the leadership level, they know that marketplace product is such a leverage, right? One change can really create a big impact on your business. And so they are also expecting you to build the next version of marketplace product that is going to move this needle, right? So all of these things are happening at the same time. And of course these challenges are interesting, and that's what I've realized, that even though there is a lot of pressure, you also learn a lot. And this is, I'm not speaking from like listening to others. So I've lived this life in different kinds of marketplaces, whether it's a e-commerce marketplace, it's a food delivery marketplace, or recently a ride hailing marketplace. That these challenges remain, and despite these challenges you can do a really good job, and you can really get satisfaction with what you're building for. And for me, a marketplace PM is generally needs to be a good people person, right? So as you are connected with stakeholders, you should make sure that you're easy to work with. right? So this is as much a preaching for what makes a successful PM. This is as much as what you should be doing to become successful, right? So you should be easy to work with, because if you are hard with so many people, it becomes very difficult both for you and also for others, and sooner or later you will get frustrated. So being a good people person is very important, and you need to also know when to experiment, when to just do something, right? And measure a before and after impact, because I know experiment is always the right way scientifically, but sometimes there are so many topics that experiment is not an option at all. So you need to figure out, okay, also take your judgment, and sometimes do things which are more obvious rather than necessarily always doing an experiment. You need to be a commercial ninja, which means that you need to know your numbers really well. You need to know how your metrics are connected with the company's revenue or profits or whatever is important for your company. And one of the key things for a marketplace PM is that you're looking to not build features, but you're looking to how to move a particular metric, and your feature could depend on the metric and the learnings that you have through your journey of experimentation or building. But it's not the feature but the metric that matters the most. Innovation is also very important, because most of these industries in marketplaces have been highly regulated industries, but you have to innovate within that, and you have to build on top of that. So legal team is your best friend there. Make sure that you are friend with them. And the last is, again, just repeating, like understanding all sides and their motivations is important. You cannot like penalize one side or just forget about one side while building for the other side. And beyond this, there are some other tactics that I will just provide, right? And again, there is no recipe for success, but I think in general, like if you follow some of these things in terms of as you are evaluating your solutions or problem spaces, you will find out that these will give you a better approach to solving them versus solving a generic problem in a way, right? So every marketplace has these geographical differences based on the density of people who is living in urban areas, suburban areas, rural, right? And also the market size and potential. And you cannot have a single solution that solves for everyone. Maybe some things will work for a segment, but it won't work for the others. So understanding these segments and where some things work versus where it doesn't is very important. The second is also nature of competition. Like depending on the kind of competition, your approach may vary a lot, right? So especially in let's say duopoly market, it's very different because you can just follow your competition in many ways. But when there are multiple players, you need to create your own niche. You cannot just follow someone and expect that a solution works for you. The other different things is, from a marketplace standpoint, is user or use case specific, right? So there are different kinds of users. Again, you can categorize them sometimes as business versus leisure, high value versus low value, based on the price elasticity. But understanding what kind of users want what kind of product at what time, these kind of things also matter, and your logic or your algorithm should bake in these things, right? So it cannot be again building for everything, every a generic solution, and assume that things work. You need to also understand the use cases, like whether it's someone going to the airport, someone needing a medical ride. So again, I'm talking more about from a ride hailing context, but I think it could also be translated into things like, okay, going for a vacation versus going for a business trip, right? So trip type also matters a lot based on customer intent. For example, where they are willing to spend more money versus where they're not willing to spend more money, and where there is more urgency, where there is less urgency, right? Like these things matter again, from understanding the problem and what do you need to solve it. Your driver or your supply profiles matter, like whether they're full-time, part-time, how experienced they are, how much more supply can you get from them versus where they're really constrained. These things also matter, because you need to know that if you're planning for X thing to improve, like where is that coming from? Is it coming from everyone? Which is rarely the case, but it's coming from a specific cohort. And the last one, which is my favorite as well, which is normally user segmentation plays a big role in understanding these user motivations and solving for them. In a marketplace context, segmentation can be looked also in terms of seasonality, like the month, seasons, weather impacts a lot. So I was just discussing with Andrea that, hey, like winters are such harsh in Germany, right? And the behavior of users on what they do in winters is very different to what they do in summers. summers people go on vacations to different places versus winters, right? So there's a very different behavior. Same time with there are holiday seasons, right? And people behave differently in holidays. Like they don't do certain things versus they do something in a different kind of the year. Similarly, peak versus non-peak, which is the second point, is also very important. Like in events, there is a big supply-demand mismatch. Demand goes up, supply goes down, or supply is limited, right? And there's a very degradation of marketplace, and the strategy that you follow is very different from a non-peak hours, where you may have a lot of demand, or sorry, you have a lot of supply but very low demand. So your strategy cannot be same in two scenarios, right? And essentially how you segment and either build a solution for a specific kind of season or a time of the day matters a lot, rather than just generically defining something. So these are some of the things that I've learned, and if you use these segments in how you think of problems and solutions, I think you'll be able to come up with more creative ways of solving a problem versus solving something on a generic basis. And yeah, this kind of ends it. And I have a last slide which I would like to again take away, which also came from the survey itself, which is, I think as a marketplace PM, your job isn't to grow only one side or one kind of user. It is to build the solution that really works holistically for all sides. And with that, I think I'm done. I'm open for any questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much, Sayan. That was very, very insightful. So we're going to move to the Q&A right now. Yes, as it's showing on the screen, we're going to use the Slido for the Q&A too. So if you have any questions for Sayan, just scan the QR code or introduce the code that you see on the screen on slido.com, and we will receive all of your questions and Sayan will reply to them. As for now, while we gather the questions, I'm going to explain a little bit more about product people in case this is the first time you're joining us and you don't know much about us. Well, as we know, like interim product management can be a bit mysterious, like what it is exactly that we do. So these are some of our use cases, aka when to engage with us. The most normal common one is for interim or fractional product management, which means for permanent position covers. Like imagine while you're hiring because someone left the product team and you need to ship an initiative fast. That's one of our use cases. Also for parental leaves covers that can be 3 to 12 months, and for important and urgent initiatives to drive product discovery, build MVPs, and so on. Another use case is for program management or product operations. Really useful when you want to upskill your product management team and want to create and streamline processes and programs. And we also do transformation acceleration, which means if you want to shift from sales or tech led to product led, or if you need to configure your product strategy or your team structure. Here you can see some of the B2C clients that have worked with us, like Eventim, eBay, and Scout24, Douglas, DeepL, and Ecosium. And here are some of our B2B clients, like the World Health Organization, Eternal Health, Ometria, and Pliant. Um, Here are some of our stats with Sprout people in numbers. It's almost 700 cross-functional team support and more than 100 clients that range from Series A to publicly listed companies. We are a team of around 40 product leaders and product managers in-house and full-time, and 59% of our women in the team and 60% in leadership, as we have a very strong bias to promote from within and attract more women in the tech industry. So this is all about proud people. Right now we're going to go into the Q&A. So let's see if we have, which questions do we have? I hope you're ready, Sayan. The first question is, how do you prepare PMs to transition into marketplace roles from other product types?
Yeah, I think so. I think the first thing that you need to do is understand the different sides of the marketplace, right? I think typically when you're working in a non-marketplace company, you are thinking from a single user and their needs, motivations, and building for that. I think the first starting point is to go and understand the different sides and what their needs and motivations are, and what are the best problems to solve in the intersection of needs from both sides, right? Because there could be many problems to solve on either sides individually, but if you're looking for more problems and opportunities to solve, I think the best is to look at the ones at the intersection of both, and that's one way to look at it. And I think the second part, which has helped me a lot, right, and I told reading is one of my hobbies. There are multiple lit, let's say literature. So I'm a part of Lenny's community, and Lenny Rachitsky, who writes on PM content. He has written a lot of content on marketplaces, different kinds of marketplaces. What are the different things that you can know? So do a lot of literature review and reading as well, to understand what kind of marketplaces exist, what is the best suited marketplace that is closely matching the problem that you are solving for. This will also give you a lot of understanding and ideas. And I think, yeah, these two are the good starting points, I would say. And apart from that, yeah, I would say just do the normal PM work, like talk to your users on both sides, look at data, right? And these should kind of help you start off fine.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Sayan, for your answer. Uh, Now, on to the second question is what's the difference between being a PM in a marketplace company versus a SaaS company?
Okay, so I think some marketplace companies are having a flavor of both B2C and B2B, right? Because the demand side is typically B2C customer, right? And a B2C customer typically has many options, and they are going to go to the option with the best whatever experience, or whosoever solves their need, right? And that's how they look at it. And like the supply side on the other side is quite similar to a SaaS company, because the supply side is typically looking to make more money, right? Whether it's a driver, whether it's a restaurant, whether it's a hotel, right? Any kind of supply, I think the primary motivation is making more money, and which is quite intersecting with a SaaS company. A SaaS company, like a SaaS company, is solving for a B2B user whose primary motivation is to either make more money or to essentially get more money by getting efficient or something. But it's more around the money part of it, right? So I think so if you're moving from a SaaS company to a marketplace, right? So I think the learnings you can have is you can equate a lot of things on the supply side with the SaaS company, but you may have to think differently when you're thinking about the users, right, or the end users who have might have different needs and who have better alternatives from a competitive standpoint. For example, there may be better options with user experience, brand, and other factors that are at play. So ensure that you think through those details, right? Don't just think of SaaS and those kind of users, but think through the other kinds of users whose motivations is very different. And as long as you understand these two differences, I think you should be able to make the transition, right? And yeah, don't assume, like, come up with a fresh perspective, and that always helps as well.
Perfect. Yeah, that's indeed very insightful. We have another question, which is how are challenges?
Hello.
Sorry, I think it was my connection that disappeared for a bit. Sorry, I'm back. I'm back again. I was reading the third question, which is how are challenges different from before finding a product market fit and after, like for example, or scaling?
Yeah, I think in most cases, finding product market fit is the most important thing in a marketplace. I know it's important for everything, but what happens is in a pre product market fit stage for a marketplace is that you need to seed one side of the marketplace for this period, right? And typically, again, I've heard a lot of debates, like people saying, okay, should we more support the demand side and supply side. And more often than not, I think the what the literature or the reading says is that supply sides need a lot of seeding. So for example, I'm just taking some examples because it's easy to relate. For a ride hailing marketplace, you need to like pay your drivers to be available for the start, or for a let's say for an Airbnb kind of thing, right? So you need to ensure that there is very little commission or no commissions for your hotels, or your like apartment owners to be remain engaged. Same for others. So supply side needs to be kind of incentivized in the initial phases while you're at not achieve the pre product market fit. And what you have to ensure is that your demand is basically coming from the supply, right? So your supply is so good, they're doing their job well, so your demand is going to get attracted. And once you achieve this thing called critical mass, right, where you have a good enough kind of base of demand and supply that brings an equilibrium without you having to subsidize the supply side, I think that's where you achieve a lot of, I would say, organic momentum in the network, where you don't need to push, right? And this is very different in a marketplace versus other companies, because in other companies the chances of you seeing this hockey stick curve is quite less, versus if you really achieve this critical mass in a marketplace company, you will see this hockey stick curve happening, which means that your users are going to come in organically on both sides, and that's really going to give your a momentum to a marketplace. And this is what every, I would say, marketplace needs to achieve. And until they achieve this, they need to either put in money or put in whatever it takes to basically get this critical mass.
Great. Thank you for your reply. We have another question, which is, in your experience, what's the first metric that shows a marketplace is healthy?
I think this is of course, I'm also biased a bit in answering this because I've not seen all kinds of marketplace. But I think the biggest, I would say, thing that indicates the health of a marketplace is something called as a liquidity. So liquidity basically just means that how good is the quality, either on the driver side, on the rider side, right? So what it means, so I can talk it from a ride hailing perspective again. So if you see that, let's say the ETAs on your platform are quite low. Like when I say low, it's something that is good enough for us to consider riding from a specific platform. Let's say FREENOW, my company, right, which is less than 5 minutes. Then it means that, so this liquidity is basically showing the ETAs in this case, the how much supply is available to take these rides on the from the marketplace side. So in each metric, each marketplace, there's a different measure of liquidity, right? So for a Airbnb kind of marketplace or any kind of listing based marketplace, right? So it's the number of results that show up when you search for something. So just if I go to Airbnb and I search for maybe hotel, like whatever, apartments in Ibiza, right? And if I see at least 10 results, it means that, okay, it's a good enough thing for me to consider it. But if this result is only, let's say, one or two, I would say probably not the right place, right? So this liquidity is this thing of, like, if I take a critical action, and what is good enough for me to consider to take that first step. So in ride hailing marketplace, it's the ETS typically, because if it's like 20-30 minutes, no one will wait, right? In a kind of listing marketplace, it's the number of search results for a query. And so you have to look at liquidity as the first measure. And the way that you can define liquidity is the, like, things that, like, make me convert, like that make my intent strong to transact or take an action in the marketplace.
Cool. So now we're on to the last question for today, which is, what has surprised you while working at FreeNow compared to other marketplaces?
I think, in general, the thing that has surprised me is the amount of regulation that we had to work with. I know Europe is like filled with regulation, but I never expected the amount of, let's say, talks that we have to do with regulators, right, to ensure that we are able to bring in innovation in the marketplace. from both sides, whether it's our riders or our drivers. I think that has been the most surprising part, because my assumption in my past experiences was that you do something and you don't need to consult with a regulatory body, and it's just you can do whatever you want, right? But the amount of constrained innovation that you have to do, and be still bringing out things for our users, is something that was quite interesting. But it's also good, right? It's because, like, no external player can come and disrupt the market, because they have to follow the same playbook, and they cannot tomorrow throw in a lot of money and disrupt things. So it also builds in some moats for us, because we have learned and we have built products which are compliant.
Great. Yeah, I think that's also very, very curious and also a great learning opportunity for sure. As tedious at compliance sometimes might be, definitely. So, as I mentioned, that was the last question for today. So, thank you everybody for joining us, and thank you, Sayan, for sharing your knowledge with us. Remember that we are hiring. So, if you are looking for a position in product management, here you have the QR code that will take you directly to our hiring page. And also, we have an amazing monthly newsletter that you can subscribe to through this QR code. Next week, what do we have in store? We're going to be talking with Elena Abramenko about how to build digital products for kids, which is definitely a very interesting topic that we hadn't touched on before. And that's everything for today. Thank you to everybody who joined us, and thank you especially to Sayan for sharing his knowledge with us. We loved having you, and we are really grateful that you came to our community today.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Andrea. Thanks for having me.